It has no fields, no wells, no fresh water at all. By every rule of where people choose to live, nothing should ever have been built here. And yet, on a reef off the coast of a remote Pacific island, someone raised a city, 100 islands of black stone, stacked by hand out of the sea. The people who live beside it today still treat it as sacred, and many of them still will not sleep there after dark. This is Nan Madol, on the island of Pohnpei, in the Federated States of Micronesia, one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth, more than 2,000 miles from any continent. For roughly 500 years, it was the beating heart of an entire Pacific kingdom, a capital with no fields and no wells, that existed for one reason: rule. Its kings governed from here, its dead were buried here, and then, over generations, it emptied and was left to the spirits. Nan Madol is not one structure. It is around 100 artificial islets, raised on a coral reef and laced together by a web of tidal canals, which is why it's sometimes called the Venice of the Pacific. You don't walk this city. You move through it by canoe, gliding down water lanes between walls of dark stone that rise straight out of the tide. The name itself means roughly the spaces between the channels that hold the whole place together. Those walls are built from columnar basalt, volcanic rock that, as it cools, naturally splits into long, many-sided stone logs. The builders stacked them crosswise like a log cabin and packed the hollow cores with coral rubble. This matters because it's where the myths begin. The columns were never carved into shape by hand. The volcano made them. The astonishing human effort wasn't in shaping the stone. It was in finding it, moving it, and lifting it into place. If forgotten cities and the people who feared them are your kind of story, take a second to subscribe, because what these stones were carrying is stranger than it looks. And the scale is hard to hold in your head. In total, Nan Madol contains an estimated 750,000 tons of basalt. Individual stones run from a few tons to 50 tons each. Some of the burial walls stand around 8 meters high, roughly 2.5 stories of stacked stone, rising out of the water, all of it quarried elsewhere on the island and brought here across reef and lagoon with no wheel, no draft animals, and no metal tools. But the deepest mystery of Nan Madol isn't how it was built, it's why anyone lived here at all. There was no farmland, no spring, no fresh water. Perhaps 1,000 people lived on these islets at its height. Priests, nobles, the royal court, and every scrap of food and every drop of water they drank had to be carried in by canoe from the rest of the island. A city that produced nothing and consumed everything. Which tells you exactly what it was for. Not survival. Power. Nan Madol was the capital of the Saudeleur dynasty, the first rulers ever to unite the whole of Pohnpei under a single throne. In Pohnpeian tradition, the line was founded by 2 brothers, sorcerers who arrived by sea and chose this reef to build a place to honor their gods. Whatever its origin, the dynasty that followed ruled for centuries, and at its peak it pulled the island's roughly 25,000 people into one tightly controlled kingdom, with Nan Madol as its sacred center. And that demand was relentless. From these islets, the Saudeleur required tribute, food, goods, labor, carried in from every corner of Pohnpei to feed a court that grew nothing for itself. Tradition remembers Saudeleur rule as growing more demanding and more feared over the generations. The high chiefs kept close, the kingdom bound together by ritual and obligation. Nan Madol wasn't just where the rulers lived, it was the stage on which their power was performed. Then comes one of the island's best-known traditions. In the story, a warrior named Isokelekel, said to be half divine, sailed to Pohnpei with a force of just over 300 men and rose against the last of the Saudeleur. The dynasty fell, but Isokelekel did not tear Nan Madol down. He took it for himself and ruled from the very stones the old kings had raised, before the system changed for good. Out of that upheaval came a new order, the Nan Madol system, a network of paramount chiefs that spread power across the island instead of concentrating it on one reef. And here is the remarkable part. That system never died. The titles and the chiefs of Pohnpei endure to this day. The kingdom that built Nan Madol is gone, but the world that replaced it is still living, right beside the ruins. So why was the city itself left empty? There was no single catastrophe. Once power moved off the reef, the reason to haul food and water out to these islets simply faded. The population thinned, the court dispersed. Slowly, over generations, Nan Madol emptied, until the canals carried no canoes, and the stone city stood alone in the tide. But emptied is not the same as forgotten. Nan Madol became sacred ground, and dangerous ground. To this day it is wrapped in taboo. The stones are tied to spirits and the dead. Tradition warns against disturbing them, and many Pohnpeians will tell you, plainly, that they still won't spend a night out among the ruins. Nan Madol has long carried a reputation as sacred and dangerous, a place to be respected and kept at a careful distance. A place this strange attracts wild explanations. You'll hear that Nan Madol is the last trace of a sunken continent, or that no ordinary people could have moved stones this heavy without help from beyond the stars. But stand in the canals, and the truth is more impressive than any of that. The basalt is local. The shaping was done by a volcano. And everything else, the quarrying, the rafting, the lifting, the 5 centuries of patience, was done by people in service of their kings and their gods. The wonder of Nan Madol isn't that it's impossible, it's that it was possible at all. So picture it as it was. Canoes crossing the lagoon year after year, loaded with food, water and tribute. A whole island bending its labor toward 100 islets that fed no one. Raising tombs and temples for rulers whose power was wrapped in ritual and sacred authority. Nan Madol is what absolute power looks like when it builds itself a monument. Every ton of that stone is a measure not of engineering, but of how much a people can be made to carry. The god kings are gone. Their tribute stopped. Their names survive mostly in legend. But the city they forced out of the sea is still here. 100 islands of black stone, standing empty in the tide, beside the descendants of the people who built it, and then learn to fear it. If this is the kind of story that stays with you, like this video and subscribe. There are more forgotten places and more uneasy questions waiting on this channel. Because Nan Madol leaves us with one of them. When a city is built only to glorify power, what is it really keeping out? And what is it keeping in?